Hey everyone, I'm Aria, and today we're going to use Mantaflow to create this fluid simulation. We are also going to do a quick setup using the geometry nodes to add some extra particles. Make sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to get a copy of this blend file, head over to my Patreon page and sign up to become a member. You'll also get access to all of the other blend files that you see on my YouTube channel, and you'll also be helping me to grow this channel. Okay, here we go. Alright, so let's grab a new scene in Blender, and I just want to show you that I am using Blender 2.92, and you can see that this is one of the release candidates, so it is almost complete. And by using this, we are able to access the new geometry nodes section of Blender, and as well, we're able to use the new APIC method in Mantaflow, so make sure to download the latest release by heading to blender.org, or you can just follow the link directly in the description to download this here. And if you are using a different version of Blender, it's no big deal, you can follow along, you just have to skip the geometry nodes part, and as well, instead of using the APIC method, you'll just use flip. Hit A to select everything and hit delete. The first thing we want to do is add our bottle, just because that's going to be the basis for our entire scene. So Shift A, Mesh, and click Cylinder. Next, let's scale this on the Z axis, so S to scale Z, and type in 2.1. Then we just want to bring it up by the same amount, so G, Z, and type in 2.1. Next, we just want to scale this on the X and Y axis, so we're going to hit S to scale, hold Shift and hit Z to lock to the X and Y, and then we're going to type in 0.5. And now let's just shape our cylinder, so tab to go into edit mode. The first thing we want to do is just start with our top set of vertices here, so let's just click away, make sure you're in vertex or edge select mode, either one, and then you can hold Alt and just click to select this top row of vertices. Hit S to scale and type in 0.5. Next, we'll hold Ctrl and R again, click, then hit Escape to add in a new set of vertices, and then we can scale this as well, so S to scale, Shift Z, and type in 1.2. Ctrl R again to add a loop cut in between these here, Escape, and then we're going to scale, so S and type in 0.8. Then that should give us the basic shape. So now we just want to add some supporting geometry, so I'm going to hit Ctrl R and just drag this up to the top. And do that for each of these, so bring these down to here, which will just give you a nicer curve. Well, let's add one to the bottom as well, so Ctrl R, and we'll just bring this all the way down. We also want to add some geometry to our bottom face here, so again we're going to hold Alt and click this edge loop, then hit I on the keyboard and just drag into the center to add some geometry. We'll just do that 2 or 3 more times. For the top, what we can do is just go up here, hit 3 to go into face select mode, or you can just select here on the top left. Click to select this top face, delete, and select faces. And now we can hit tab to go back into object mode, right click, and shade smooth. Now that we've got our basic shape, let's head over to the Modifiers tab on the right. Click here, then we're going to select this and select Solidify. Set the thickness to 0.1. Then we're going to add one more modifier, so click here and click Subdivision Surface, and then set this to 2. And I know this is super basic, you could probably make something a lot nicer, but this is going to work for now. Just before we move on, let's head over to the physics properties and click here. Click Fluid, and we want to turn this into an effector just because we may have some interaction with our fluid, so let's select this here and click Effector. Just to be sure that we don't have any liquid crashing through our geometry, let's set the thickness to 0.2. And mostly this is just going to affect this top area here as the liquid comes out. Next we can add our emitter, so Shift A, Mesh, and let's click Icosphere. Then we want to scale this, so hit S to scale and type in 0.15. G and Z, and we can just bring this all the way up just until it's just at the top of our bottle. By the way, let's start naming stuff just so that we don't get confused. So bottle for our cylinder, and we can name our icosphere emitter. Now that we've got our emitter, we don't need to make any other changes. Let's just head over to the physics, click fluid, then set the type to flow, change smoke to liquid, And since we want a constant inflow, let's change this from geometry to inflow. If you keep it on geometry, you basically just get one burst of liquid. Finally, let's add some velocity. So let's turn on initial velocity, head to the set, and type in 5. Then finally, to make our fluid simulation complete, we're going to add a domain. So Shift A, mesh, and let's select cube. Then let's just bring this up. So G, Z, and type in 3. And then let's scale this. So S to scale and type in 3.5. If you just come up to the right here, you can turn on the X-ray toggle just so that we can see through. Then we can head over to the physics properties, click fluid, and set the type to domain. We want to set that type to liquid to match our emitter. Then for this tutorial, we're going to set our resolutions to 64 to start. Let's set this time scale to 0.5, which will just cause our liquid to move at half the regular speed. Then again, depending on what you're using, I'm just going to change mine to APIC, but if you're not using Blender 2.92, you can just leave this to flip. Keep on scrolling down, and we're just going to add some diffusion, and we can just leave that to default. Next, we want to add a mesh. Basically, this will be the thing that covers our liquid. So activate that, and then you want to set this to 2 or 3. One thing that I like to do, since we are going to be making some changes with this, is just add a second window. So head down to the bottom here, just until you see this plus symbol. Then you want to click and drag to open up a new window. Scroll all the way to the top, and you can click this little pin icon, and what that will do is sort of set it in place to wherever you put it. So I'm going to scroll all the way back down till I've got our cache settings here. Now once we go make some changes to our other things, we don't always have to come back and scroll down. We can just have the settings that we need right here. Alright, so if we were to play our simulation now, you don't have to do this. I'm just going to show you quickly. It's just going to basically shooting straight up. So now what we want to do is add in the guide for our liquid. So the way I did this was going to the curve, so Shift A and curve. And if yours doesn't look like this with all of these extra curves, there's a quick way to do that. So just head up to the top left, click Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and then you want to search for the word Extra. And you just want to make sure that the Add Curve Extra Objects is turned on. Then again, Shift A and go to Curve. All the way down to the bottom, you can see Curve Spirals. And we want to click this first one here, Archimedean. When you click that, you should see a menu pop up on the left. If not, just make sure to click this little arrow here to open that up. First, let's just set our height just so that you can see what's going on here. So I'm going to set that to 2.1, and then if I set my turns to 2, you can see that it adds an extra level on top of that. Let's give our radius a value of 0.75 just to tighten up our spiral. And then if you want the spiral to sort of shrink over time, what we can do is use the radius growth and type in 0.5. Then the final thing we want to do is just invert this. So let's head over to the rotation, and you can either use the X or the Y and type in 180. And that's it. So now we can hit G and Z just to bring this up. And then you want to have the top vertex just above the bottle here. Then I just modified this a little bit just to grab our fluid a little bit earlier. So if you hit 7 on the numpad, you can go into top orthographic view. And then you just want to grab this last vertex, hit E, and we can just drag this over until it's right above our emitter. If you want, you can just bring it up a little bit too. So G, Z, and just bring this up. That way, as soon as our fluid gets to here, it'll start interacting. Now we can hit tab to go back into edit mode, and then I'm just going to rotate mine a little bit just so that it's facing a different way. So R to rotate, Z, and type in 90. Now if we were to just leave our curve this way, our fluid would sort of be more cylindrical, and in our case we want it to be a little bit more flat. So let's add some extra geometry to this curve. And the way we do that is just heading over here to the curve properties on the right. Select this little curve icon, and then if we just scroll into here, we can open up the geometry tab. Then for our extrusion, we want to type in 0.2. And as well, we want to set our bevel depth to 0.025. Now that we've got our base curve, we can use this to add all of our forces. Then we want to head over to the right to the physics properties and add our first force field. So let's click here. Then our first force is going to just be called force, so we're just going to leave it as the default. If we were to just leave this as default, basically what you have is a force here with a center, and everything would be pushed out from this center in 360 degrees. So to utilize this curve, what we need to do is change this shape to curve. And what this will do is turn our entire curve into a force so that each part of this will be acting as our force instead of just this little area here. Then the only other thing we need to do is change the strength to -20. Save, and if I was to hit play, you'll see that our liquid just sort of still goes straight up, so this is where this comes into play. Every time you add something, for some reason Blender needs to recalculate, so the way I do that is I just reselect replay. And of course, make sure that you're on frame 1 as well. Now if I hit play, you can see that our force will start to take effect. Awesome, so that's looking great. While we're seeing that, let's just make sure to select it, right click, and shade smooth. Now we need to add in our new force, so let's just select our spiral. Then let's name this force just because we're going to have a few of these, so just make sure you have it selected, hold shift and hit D. Then escape and just head back to frame 1. Let's rename this into Vortex. We don't need to see our force objects anymore, so I'm just going to head up to the top here and turn on some render toggles. Then I'm going to just turn off the visibility for the viewport for our first force and as well for the render. Then the center one we want to leave on so that it's still active as part of our simulation. Down into the physics properties, let's change the type from force to vortex. Let's leave this at curve and set the strength to 1. I'm just going to quickly show you, so replay and hit play. Great, so now our liquid is starting to take the shape that we want, but let's hone this in a little bit more by selecting our vortex, back to frame 1. Then Shift D to copy and escape. Let's turn off our vortex force and rename our new force to harmonic. Head down and change the type from vortex to harmonic. Let's leave the strength at 1, set the damping to 0, and the rest length to 2. Then you'll notice what this is doing is just bringing our fluid together a bit more. And now you see that that's looking a lot better, so our liquid is sort of sticking together better now. But we want to take this one step further, so again, back to frame 1, Shift D and escape to add a new curve. Let's hide our harmonic and name our final force to turbulence. Head down again, then let's change the type from harmonic to turbulence. Set the strength to 25. Let's make the size quite large to 10 and set the flow to 2. And of course this is pretty straightforward. This is just going to give our liquid some noise. Then one more time we'll just hit replay and I'm just going to show you how that's looking. Our liquid is looking really good and it's a lot more flat. In my animation, I had my liquid disappear, so I'm just going to show you how to do that, and this is just optional if you want to have that effect as well. So we'll just hide our turbulence, and then we're going to add in a new curve, so Shift A, curve, and we're going to do the same thing, so curve spirals and Archimedean. Let's do the same settings, so 2, 0.5, 0.75, and we'll do 2.1 for the height. Let's rotate this on the y-axis by 180. Then we just want to line it up, so let's turn our turbulence back on for a sec. Then tab to go back into object mode, G, Z, and we'll just bring this up. Make sure to rotate it as well, so R, Z, and type in 90. Then again, just G, Z, and we'll just bring this up right until it's matching our other curve. And that should be good. So now we can just again hide our turbulence. Then when we've got our spiral selected, we'll head into the object data properties. Again, we're going to set our extrude to 0.2, but we're also going to set our depth to 0.2 as well. Now, if we head into the physics properties, you can see that we can't add this to Mantaflow, so what we need to do is just turn this into a mesh. So let's right click and convert to mesh. Now you'll see that we've got our fluid option available, so let's select fluid. And then we're going to select flow as the type, then set this to liquid and outflow. I'm just going to add a little bit more geometry to here just in case our liquid goes a little bit farther. So make sure to select all of these vertices right at the end. to select all those, and then you just want to hit E, and we can just bring this out just a little bit along the x-axis. And now you can hit Tab to go back into object mode. Now that we've got that complete, let's name this outflow, and just before we head back, I want to select this emitter. And instead of emitting all the way till frame 180, let's bring this all the way back to 100 just to make our emission a little shorter. I did a bit of a test and it was just too much. So now when we go to frame 100, you can see that we're using our inflow. But by the next frame, we're going to shut that down. And now finally we can select our domain. And if you do have a slower computer, just leave this to 64. I'm going to set mine a little bit higher to 80. And I know this doesn't seem like a lot, but my computer will bake this at 64 resolutions in 4 minutes. Whereas if I set it to 80, it takes about 11. So just keep that in mind, and then we'll head all the way down to the bottom. Make sure again that you've got your emitter set to turn off at frame 100 and your outflow to start at frame 190. Then we'll go all the way down to the cache and we'll select this and switch from replay to all. Then make sure to save and hit bake. Now that that's complete, make sure to hit save and let's just turn off our outflow object. And we can also turn off our emitter. Then hit play and we can watch our simulation. Awesome, so that's looking pretty good. You may want to run your simulation a little bit longer and just tweak your outflow object a little bit. Then now that we've got our simulation complete, we can start putting together the rest of our scene. So let's add our ground plane, Shift A, Mesh, and click Cube. Then let's scale this, so S, Z, and type in 0.1. We also want to scale this on the X and Y, so let's hit S to scale, Shift Z, and type in 3. Let's just quickly add a bevel, hold Control, hit B, and then we'll just drag this out a little bit. You can also scroll up and down on your mouse wheel to add more or less cuts. I'm just going to do that one time. Tab to go back into object mode, right click and shade smooth. Then we can head into the modifiers, click here, and we're going to add a subdivision surface and set these to 2. Great, now we can just move this down, so GZ, and we'll just bring this down just underneath our bottle. Next, let's add our background cylinder, so Shift A, cylinder, and then we want to scale this up, so then hit S to scale and type in 25. Let's just zoom out and we're going to scale this on the Z as well, so SZ and type in 0.5. Let's just line this up, so hit 3 to go into right over the graphic. Click here to turn on the X-ray, and then we'll just bring this up, so G, Z, and then just drag this up until that's lined up. Then we can turn off our X-ray toggle. And now we just want to add a little bit more geometry, so let's hit Tab to go into edit mode. Hit 3 on your keyboard or click here to go into face select mode. Select this top face, delete, and select faces. Then we just want to add some loop cuts, so hold Control, R, and click. Then hit escape, and then we can set this to 6. We also want to add geometry to our bottom face, so hold Alt and select this loop. Then you just want to hit I and drag your mouse in, and do this a few times. Then we can hit A to select everything, right click, subdivide one more time, and set this to 2. And that's it, so now we can tab to go back into object mode. We'll just zoom in and shade smooth. Let's head over to the modifiers tab, click here, and we're going to add a wireframe. Uncheck replace original, and then we just want to apply our scale, so Control A, and just select all transforms. Just to finalize our scene, we just need to add some materials and lighting, and then to finalize, we're just going to use the geometry node just quickly. So for our lighting today, we're just going to use a single light, but first we want to head over to the world properties. Then just select this color here and bring it all the way down. And next we can add a light, so let's hit Shift A, head down and select light and point. GZ and type in 15 to bring this up, and you can see now it's way up here. So let's head over to the light properties, change the power to 20,000, and set the radius to 8. Now we can just zoom back in. Leave this for now and head up to the top. Let's click the shading tab. Then we'll just center our objects here and we can start adding our materials. So let's head up to the right, turn on the render preview, and most of these materials are just going to be super basic. So let's click our ground plane and select new. Let's bring the color all the way down, and if you're going to stick with Eevee, you want to go somewhere around 25%. But since I'm going to be switching over to cycles, I'm going to bring this all the way down. Next, I'm going to bring the metallic all the way up to 1, and then the clear coat to 1 as well. Next, we can select our cylinder, which is just our background cylinder. Then we want to add the same material, so select here and click Material. And next, let's select our bottle and click New. Let's click on the base color here and just give it a slightly blue tinge, and then let's just bring this all the way down to about 25%. Metallic up to 1, roughness to 0.2, and clear coat to 1 as well. Then for our final material, we can just click on our domain, click New. Then we'll just again bring our base color down to about 25% value. Set the roughness all the way to 0, and let's bring the transmission up to 1. And now things are starting to look really good. So at this point, I'm going to switch over to cycles. But if you are sticking with Eevee, like I said, just add some value to these objects just so that you can see them a little bit better. So into the render properties, and I'm going to turn on cycles and set it to the GPU. And now that we've got this all complete, what we can do is add our extra particles. So let's just turn the shading off and turn overlays back on. I'm going to just select the bottle, and if you're using Blender 2.92, you can follow along. If you're just using an older version of Blender, feel free to just add some hair particles. For those of you using 2.92, let's select here and we can go into the geometry node editor. You can see there's nothing here, so let's click New. Then I'm not going to give a full tutorial on this just because there's a lot of great tutorials out there. But I'm just going to show you a few basic things on how I got my look. So just quickly, this is our input geometry, which is our bottle, and then this is our output. So right now there's nothing in between, so it's just going to take everything that we've made from our input and set it directly out. So anything we want to do has to go in between. So we're just going to do a basic little particle setting here. So Shift A and search for point. Then you want to select point distribute. Hover over this and click it in. You'll see right away that basically what we have is our geometry, and it's going into our point distribute, which is turning it into small little points and then outputting it. Because we want to have our bottle there, let's bring that back. The way we do that is use a different node called join. So let's just Shift A and search for join. If we just click this here, you can see that we've got two inputs. So we're going to bring our points in, and we're going to take our original geometry and bring it back in as well. And now you'll see that we've got both there. Next, we want to change which type of object we're going to use for our points. So search for point instance. And again, we just want to click that in our top line here. Then you'll see that everything disappears because we don't have any input here. So let's just quickly add a particle. Shift A, Mesh, Icosphere. Head over to the modifiers and add a subdivision surface of 2. And shade smooth. Then let's just bring this out of the way by hitting GZ and dragging downward. Select back on the bottle, and to get our object here, we can just click and head all the way down to Icosphere. Our particles are a little skewed, and the reason why this is happening is because if I hit N on the keyboard and select our bottle, you'll see that we haven't applied our scale value. So again, just make sure that you've got the bottle selected, then hold Ctrl A and select scale. Then you'll see that our particles are back into spheres and we've applied our scale. So now we need to resize them. So Shift A and let's search for attribute. Find attribute randomize. Then you want to put it in line right here. So if I was to change the maximum to 0.04, you can see that nothing really happens at all. And nothing is happening here, so what we need to do is we actually need to tell this node what to do. So in this case, what we want to do is just type in the word scale, just like you see it. Then automatically you'll see that now our size takes effect. Change that back to 0.04, and we could just come over here and up the density. But you'll see that if we zoom in, things are crashing into each other. So to fix that, what we want to do is in this point distribute, select this, and we're going to select this other option here. And we can add a minimum distance. So let's type in 0.075. And now you'll see that there's a minimum distance between our particles, which is super helpful and not something that you can really do with the particle system. And that's pretty much it. The other thing that I did is you can see that our particles are going to go underneath as well. So you could also add a Boolean by simply adding in some sort of geometry. So let's just add in a cube. Then let's just bring this up and we can scale this. So it's just near the bottom of our bottle. Click back on the bottle. And the best way to bring this into our geometry is Shift A and search for Object Info. Click here and we're going to select Cube 01. Then we need to hook the geometry into something. So our final node that we're going to add is the Boolean. So search for Boolean. Click it here and then we can just hook our geometry into our geometry. You'll see that it's doing something a little funny. So again, we just want to apply our scale. So let's select Cube 1, Control A and select Scale. And now you'll see that our particles are restricted to just within this Boolean. And that's it. So that's pretty much our basic setup. Then if you want, you can also add it to the liquid. And the best way I found to do this is to just simply replicate it this way. If I just quickly turn on the shading, you can see that the last thing we need to do is just add a material to our particle. So let's head back to the Layer tab. We can select our particle, which is our icosphere. Head into the materials, click New. Then again, let's bring the value down into a deep gray. Roughness all the way down, and let's bring the transmission all the way up. The final thing we can do is add our camera, so Shift A, click Camera, then you just want to pick a frame and set up your view, Control Alt and hit 0. I like to hit F3 and search for Walk Navigation just so I can set up my viewport using the arrow keys and the mouse. Head over into the camera properties and let's add some depth of field. You could use the bottle as a focus object, but I find it better to add an empty, so Shift A, Plane Axis, Empty. Then let's just bring this to about the front of the liquid. Now again back into the camera and we're going to select our empty as our focus object. Then set the f-stop to 0.2. And then I also added some cubes to the background just to fill up some of this open space. If you want to animate the camera, head back to frame 1. Select the camera, hit F3, and we'll just drag this back. Then hit I and set a keyframe for the location. Go to the final frame, walk navigation again, and we're just going to zoom in. I and set a new keyframe. Then you can just hover over the timeline, hit T, and set to linear. Before you head into the render, just make sure that you also turn off anything in the render that's not supposed to be there. And now you can just pick any frame that you like, and let's head into the rendering. Render and render image. And there's our final image. So I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to like and subscribe, and as well, if you're able to support me with a donation, head over to my Patreon page and sign up to become a member. I'll see you soon. Bye!